games at?
Where are the games?
Where are the games?
It's dry. Where are the games?
I kind of keep waiting for them to do their thing.
I don't see anything.
These are easily the most pointless upgrades I've ever experienced.
What is the point of buying a console if you can just make a PC?
If you're gonna have everything on PC, why not just buy a PC and then console?
Where are the games? Where are the deadlines? Where are the projects? Where are the teases? Like, it feels weird that it's like,
Why buy consoles?
Now comes the fun part. We get to see how the development community takes advantage of that feature.
What up, guys? This is your boy Ligo, one half and do with another edition of Generation N. Now, we all have people talking about, oh man, look, the console wars and the console wars and the console wars. I want to reflect on the true console wars. The one that we having right now, the 9th generation, going into the 10th generation, with the Nintendo Switch coming to be the 10th generation console, blah and blue. The 9th one, blah and blue. The 8th, blah and blue. The 7th, yes, that the 2 generations. There's 3 generations really. There's 3 generations really out there. 4, to be honest, to be really understandable. We gotta get to the first generation war because it started that. It's not the most significant, but it did start most of the competitorship and making sure games get better. So competition is good. So I am not against that at all. The GameCube, Xbox, PlayStation. That was a really good generational war. I would call that number 3. That one was really good. Because that sparked up something where I would call that number 4. That's 3. Yeah, 3. That sparked up really good competition. Xbox entered the scene, pushed online gaming, even though it's gonna be the downfall of most gaming, but push online gaming and push more IPs and more difference in games and stuff like that I cannot deny. Then we go up to me, which I think number 3. The second is this is the second best console war out there, which was Wii, 360, and PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 has some good games. Xbox and PlayStation try to copy from Nintendo because of the whole casual gamers. PlayStation pushed the Blu-ray, which made money for them. That they try to repeat the same thing with the PlayStation 2 with the DVDs, and that was one of the reasons a lot of people buy the Blu-ray, because they wanted the movies to be like that. So kudos to them. I'm not knocking them for not having that situation. But the Wii came out, brought a new set of people into the gaming market. From grandmas to grandpas to uncles, aunts, young, old. 360 continued capping, as you would see the last couple of generation ends that I put out, with 360 becoming what it was and pushing Xbox Live and and Xbox Arcade, which was pretty cool and everything. So they had it, and then the Nintendo Wii being into the casual market, but had games and won that console war. Everybody stand on the uniqueness, and that came a real good. Like, I liked it. Again, that was the first and the only time I ever stand out to get a pre-order for a console. That's what I did, and that was its own craziness. And of course, it goes into. But we need to talk about the true console war. The true console war. The greatest console war. And this is not the only video we'll talk about. There's another video which we talk about. I gotta see about the Nintendo Sega behind the scenes. That one's really good. So hopefully I'll bring that later on, in the year or whatever. But this one, I think that was a little more difficult because it's CBS, and CBS like the copyright strike. Even though I don't do this for money, they will copyright strike the crap and block it, bastards. But anyway, yeah. So But here is the console. This is the true console war. This is the one where console was good and gamers were eating good because we were getting great games for a reason. And I want to talk about this. This company nerfed their games on other consoles. But this is about the console wars. Sega and Nintendo. Genesis versus Super Nintendo. That was the best console war fight ever.
Developed and published games on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. If you take any of their games with the same title, you would think both versions would be the same, but that was almost never the case with Konami. It seemed like Konami prioritized the Super Nintendo while the Genesis was just an afterthought. But was this really the case? Let's take a look.
So we're looking at it through the Konami side of it. You go look at it through more Midway side. You see how Midway did stuff on Genesis better with NBA Jam and also Mortal Kombat. Acclaim and everything. Acclaim had the same thing too. Some games on Acclaim some of them was good on the Super Nintendo. Some was good on Genesis. That's why I say this was the greatest console war is ever. And some of you gamers who listen to it, y'all never lived through it. Was the Genesis and the Super Nintendo.
What's going on? It's Poger coming at you with another video. So let me ask you, do you own any Konami games on Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis?
Both.
If you do, let me know in the Discord server, discord.poger.net, or leave a comment on this video.
Both.
Alright, let's talk about Konami on the Genesis and Super Nintendo. During the days of the NES, Nintendo required third-party companies to sign an exclusivity clause. This means if you wanted to release games on the NES, you were not allowed to publish games on other consoles.
And the reason they did that, for people who go say stupid stuff, the reason they did that is because they understand why the market crash was crazy on the NES. And because of that, you had to have a quality, Nintendo put a quality seal on it that the game works good. It wasn't super glitchy. But trust me, back in the days, games were glitchy. Do not get it wrong, but it wasn't as bad as they were back before the market crash. And you had at least more quality games.
This greatly hurt Nintendo's competitor, Sega. The Master System completely failed in the US because of the lack of third-party support. The Genesis originally had this problem in the first couple years, but this would all change sometime around 1992. Nintendo would relax their policies and allow third-party developers to publish games on other platforms. With the new opportunity, Konami...
So you see that? They relax it so we can have more better competition, have games. So yeah, Nintendo is so hardcore, they don't care about other companies, blah, 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 and here you go again. Now Hudson, he had a couple good games, but most Hudson, Hudson soft. Most of us say Hudson soft. Y'all did some crappy shit though.
Began developing and publishing Genesis games. Sure enough, many games that were released on the Super Nintendo also got a Genesis version.
Yep.
You would think this would be a direct port with only minor changes, but
Nope.
Konami went the extra mile and usually delivered something completely different. The reason is unclear. Supposedly, Nintendo didn't allow Konami to directly port over their games from the Super Nintendo, but I was not able to find any evidence supporting that. It could be that Konami just wanted to go above and beyond and deliver two completely different experiences. Maybe someone has both consoles and wouldn't mind having two different versions of Animaniacs. But here's the big question. Did Konami prioritize Super Nintendo games over Genesis ones? Were the Genesis games just lesser versions of their Super Nintendo counterparts? We're gonna go over a few examples. Number 1. Let's start off with Turtles in Time.
Yeah,
It's a beat 'em up where you must defeat the enemies to make the screen move. There's multiple different attacks, like being able to throw the enemies towards the screen. I always thought this was cool. You have a special move that kills enemies in one hit, but you lose some health in the process. The premise is that Shredder steals a Statue of Liberty, and you must defeat him and get it back. Throughout the game, Shredder will send you back in time as well as the future. This gives you more unique levels instead of just the same typical locations that you find in a Ninja Turtles series. The game is definitely challenging, especially on the hardest difficulty.
Oh yeah.
When fighting Shredder in the Technodrome, you're supposed to throw enemies at his machine. But the foot soldiers kept blocking my attacks, so it took me a while to figure out a strategy. I also always had trouble fighting Slash, even when I was a kid. This game is a port of the arcade version, but some cool upgrades were made. For example, Neon Knight Riders now uses Mode 7, which is a nice addition. This was always my favorite level. The Technodrome is an extra level that was not in the original arcade version. It's one thing to make an excellent port of an arcade game, but to make it even better is an incredible accomplishment. The Genesis would not get Turtles in Time, but would receive a similar game, Hyperstone Heist. The premise is similar, except that the entire Manhattan skyline melts away. We do get some extra cutscenes that were not in the Super Nintendo version. The gameplay is a watered-down version of Turtles in Time. Nearly every stage from that game shows up in Hyperstone Heist in some way. For example, here's Sewer Surfing, Skull and Crossbones, and Alley Cat Blues. The only level that's original is Shredder's Hideout. This is a minor complaint, but the fact that there's a black bar at the top of the screen makes the console look weak. This would be acceptable for an NES game, but not a Genesis one. The gameplay has suffered a little bit too. You can no longer throw enemies towards the screen, which is a letdown. There's also this weird bug where you can perform the slide attack over and over again. This makes the game significantly easier. The Super Nintendo version didn't allow you to pull off the slide as rapidly, so I wonder if this was a mistake. The game is also significantly shorter than the Super Nintendo one. Many levels don't have bosses and instead just bring you to the next part. Konami even included a boss rush to pad out the content even more. That's pretty bad considering the Super Nintendo version didn't have that. The game doesn't have as much polish as Turtles in Time. That game had a voiceover at the beginning of the stage.
Starbase, where no turtle has gone before.
The Genesis version, though, is completely silent.
Yep, I remember that.
Speaking of voiceovers, the ones that do remain sound terrible.
Let it show! Shell shock!
All the music except for Shredder's Hideout was copied from Turtles in Time, and it sounds worse. To be fair, this was the console's fault, not Konami's. You also don't travel through time like you did in the Super Nintendo game, which is disappointing. Unfortunately, Genesis owners got the short end of the stick, but at least they got something.
Oh, it was still a good game.
Number 2. Here's Tiny Toon Adventures Buster Busts Loose. It's a basic platformer. Buster can perform a flip kick to destroy the enemies. Your main ability is the dash, which allows you to move fast and climb walls. You can only do this temporarily though, which is indicated by the meter above. You do have to master the dash move because the stages are very reliant on it. The game is surprisingly difficult for a Tiny Toons game, especially Stage 2. It's an auto-scroller where you need extremely fast reflexes to get through it. The bosses are very creative. For example, to beat Dizzy, you must feed him as many entrees as possible. My only complaint about this game is the padding. The bonus levels are long and dragged out, and there's no way to skip them. There's also a lot of cutscenes that are unskippable. The controls are fine, but I was disappointed they didn't go with a more floaty platformer like the NES game. That version was a Super Mario Bros. 3 clone, and it worked really well. But I still think this is a decent game. Konami would release a Tiny Toons game on the Genesis as well called Buster's Hidden Treasure. This is more like the platformer I was expecting. The dash move is gone, and now you just jump on enemies instead of using the flip kick. The controls are floatier too. The levels are more linear, where you just have to look for the exit, which is usually to the right. There's also way more levels in this game. Konami went with a Super Mario World style map where you can re-enter stages if you'd like. Dr. Gene Splice, despite only being in a couple episodes of the show, makes a big appearance in this game. He takes on a Dr. Robotnik-like role where you mainly fight him in the first half of the game. I also wanted to comment on the music. Konami was one of the few companies to not use the GEM sound engine, and as a result, we get some incredible tracks. The only issue I have with the game is the controls. Buster moves way too fast and he falls like a rock. Even though it's floatier than the Super Nintendo version, it's still not floaty like the NES game. Between these three titles, I like the NES version the most, but I do like Buster's Hidden Treasure more than the Super Nintendo game. If you've made it this far in the video, hit that subscribe button right down there.
Both of them was really good games.
It helps me out greatly.
They really were good games.
Number 3. Let's take a look at the Genesis version of Animaniacs.
Oh boy.
It's a platformer puzzle game where you must use the character's ability to get through the levels. Yakko can move boxes, which is where the puzzle aspect comes from. Wacko has a hammer that can be used for hitting switches and breaking objects. Dot can infatuate enemies by throwing hearts. This will help you get past certain obstacles in the game. Your life bar is represented by your character's facial expression at the top, which is creative. The more times you get hit, the more distraught your character becomes. A good portion of the game is trial and error, where you have to move the boxes in the correct place.
I didn't beat this
A few times
one.
I messed up, so I had to re-enter the area.
I'll be honest, I did not beat this one. This one was a little difficult. And again, I was renting games back in the day, so after a while, I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna try another game because I'm not getting it in time.
So I could reset everything. The controls are annoying. Switching between characters takes too long, and you can only switch in order. The level design also makes you switch characters every second. 1 minute you need Yakko to move crates, and then right after you need Wacko to break something. For some reason, Wacko's animation is delayed when using the hammer, but if you use it in the air, it comes out immediately. Same thing with Dot when she uses the heart. In my opinion, this is bad programming. It's not a terrible game, but not my favorite. They went in a completely different direction with the Super Nintendo version.
Yep.
It's a platformer, but you're not confined to a 2D playfield. You're able to move in multiple directions and interact in a 3D-like environment. The Animaniacs no longer have any differences between each other outside of appearance. Your main way of attacking is performing a dash, but you can also throw items. I always thought it was weird that you don't carry the items, they just flow in the air. You can also call the characters together to reach higher platforms, but you can't do this if your siblings are captured. There's 5 different areas you can access, each of which have different stages within. The game is less lenient than a Genesis one. If you get hit even just one time, you lose that Animaniac. If you lose all 3, it's game over.
Yeah.
You can earn continues though. You have the option to rescue your captured siblings, but you have to exit the level you're playing, which is usually not worth it. You can also earn them back if you get lucky in the slot machines. The slot machines are also your only way of earning continues. The puzzle aspect from the Genesis version is gone, so now it's strictly platforming.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variety in the gameplay, which keeps the game fresh. You're not just doing the same thing over and over again. The developers were ambitious to try a 3D perspective like this, and they did everything they could to keep the player from being confused. For example, there's arrows on the ground that tell you where to jump from. It's not perfect though. The game doesn't control as well as it looks. Your character moves on a grid, and when you jump, you can't move vertically very well. The 3D perspective can still be confusing at times, and it can be hard to tell if I'm lined up with the platforms I'm jumping to. Nonetheless, I think this is way better than the Genesis version. In this case, normally I would say Konami preferred Nintendo over Sega, but both games are simply called Animaniacs, so the title itself doesn't appear to give any preference to either console.
Nope.
Both games are so drastically different, and one doesn't appear to be a port of the other. Number 4. Here's Contra 3: The Alien Wars.
Oh, yeah.
It's a run-and-gun game where you must walk to the right and fight a boss at the end. A lot of the classic weapons from the older Contra games are here, along with a few new ones. The controls feel exactly like the NES games. You're still able to shoot in 8 directions, including diagonally. There's a few cool upgrades from the older Contra games. You can actually carry more than one weapon, and if you die, you only lose the weapon you have selected. The controls are also way better. By pressing R on the controller, you can shoot diagonally while standing still. This was not a feature in the NES version because there was no L or R button.
Yep.
The game also features overhead stages where you must clear all the target enemies. These are okay, but the controls could have been better. The D-pad makes your character move in place, while L and R actually make you rotate. I feel like they could have come up with a better control scheme than this, but the overhead levels are still a lot of fun. Konami took the Contra formula and made it better. This is one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. 2 years later, the Genesis got Contra Hardcore, not Corpse. They made some drastic changes from the Super Nintendo game. You can now pick between 4 characters, all of which have their own unique weapons. Some of the weapons return from the previous games, while others are completely new. You can also pick between different stages, all of which change the outcome of the game.
Yep.
The game does borrow some aspects from Contra 3, like being able to climb walls and access to that bomb weapon. Because you have multiple characters, way more weapons, and multiple different endings, this game has a lot of replayability. From a technological standpoint, they pulled off some impressive effects. The bosses are extremely large and have very fluent movement. I'm honestly impressed they were able to pull this off. The only thing I don't like about this version is the controls. To shoot while standing still, you have to press the C button and then press it again to turn it off. This is more difficult and clunkier to use than in the Super Nintendo game where you could just hold the R button. But nonetheless, instead of giving us a copy of Contra 3, Konami gave us something completely different, and I respect that. You could make the argument that Konami did prioritize Nintendo because the NES did receive the official Contra 3 while the Genesis version is just called Contra Hardcore. But if they really didn't care, they wouldn't have put so much effort into giving us such a phenomenal game. So did Konami prefer the Super Nintendo over the Genesis? In some cases, yes, but not always. Hyperstone Heist is nothing more than a poor man's Turtles in Time, and Contra 3 was given a more official title than a Genesis release. But when looking at the Genesis versions, we still get great games, most of which are completely different from the Super Nintendo iterations. If Konami didn't care, they would not have put effort into giving Genesis owners a new experience.
And that's back in the day, when you can respect Konami and have no problem with Konami. Now again, there's other Acclaim, Midway, the game, like I said, there are other consoles. That's what I said. The generation with the generation with Super Nintendo and Xbox and Sega was, to me, the best anything you could say a console was. I'm gonna look at more console wars of like companies like this, so you guys could see, you could see what I'm talking about. But that's for Generation N. But again, if I could play that one that I'm talking about, you guys like it, and we'll see how that works. All right. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this little quick one right here. And what was your favorite game to play back in the day if you're as old as me? Or even if it's not in here, what version of what multiplayer game, well, not multiplayer, sorry, multi-console game in that era did you like the most? Did you like Turtles in Time over Hyperstone? Did you like Aladdin Super Nintendo over Aladdin Genesis? The same thing with Lion King. Just let me know in the comments below. And remember, you guys have a nice day. We'll catch you in the next episode of Generation N. Remember, there's no perfect console out there. What's perfect to you is not perfect to me. What's perfect to me is not perfect to you. Simply enjoy your games on all consoles, including PC and mobile devices. Peace out.